session. So everybody who registered for this will get a email from me tomorrow with a link to a lot of the information I will present to you here tonight. And you can also respond there with any questions. But my name is Sean Hogan, and I'm the Director of Athlete Relations at College Hockey Inc. We do a variety of things at College Hockey Inc. One of the things that we do is we partner with NCAA Division I athletic departments, and we work with those athletic departments and try to create more NCAA Division I hockey teams. And I am confident to say that outreach project is working. And as you've seen in recent years, there's been more Division I teams added, and there will be more in the future. And that's great news for players like you, because more teams means more scholarships, which means more of an opportunity to pursue NCAA Division I hockey. So that's one of the things that we do. We also do a lot of research at College Hockey Inc. And I'll share a lot of that research here with you today. And what I mean by research is we take a look at where NCAA Division I players play, and we can show you what to expect at different ages. So we'll share some of that with you here today. But really, at our core, what College Hockey Inc. is an founded to be is an education organization. And we're here to educate the aspiring, really our target audience is 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old hockey player, that hockey player just like you, to make sure that you fully understand the benefits of pursuing the NCAA hockey development path. And the reason for that is because hockey is so unique that you have choices as a player on your road to the highest level in the world, on your road to the NHL, for example. And other sports don't have those choices. And what I mean by that, let's take football as an example. Football players, their road to the NFL is pretty clear cut. Everybody knows you play high school football, and then you go to your university, and hopefully you're drafted from your university and you have an opportunity in the NFL. Hockey is a different sport, and there's a variety of choices on that path. And one of those choices, and we'll cover this a little bit, maybe you aren't aware of this, is what's called the CHL. That's the OHL, the WHL, and the QMJHL. And those players are not eligible for college athletics. So that's really why we exist. We serve to educate the aspiring young player, the coaches, parents, any agents and advisors that players work with, to make sure you fully understand the NCAA Division I development path. We're a small organization. There's only 3 of us that do this job. Mike Sneeze, my boss, he's in Minnesota. Again, my name is Sean Hogan. I'm the Senior Director of Athlete Relations, and I'm speaking to you today from East Lansing, Michigan. And then Jason Hajdu, he's our first Canadian employee. He's actually from Regina, Saskatchewan, but he lives in Kansas City, Missouri now. So today, for the next half hour or so, we'll talk about college hockey and the NHL and what that relationship looks like today. And again, when you're viewing this presentation or listening to this presentation, keep in mind that players have choices. So the first little bit of this presentation will be comparing NCAA hockey to maybe some of your other choices. And we'll talk about the benefits of pursuing college hockey. Why should you play college hockey? And how does that prepare you for the highest level in the world? Then we'll educate you about what it looks like. I'll educate you about the age at which things happen. We'll talk about what scholarships look like. We'll talk about academic requirements and a variety of different things near the end of the presentation. And then I think what makes us special and makes us a unique resource, especially in the world of youth sports today, is that we are a 100% free organization. We're a nonprofit. We're funded by the NHL, and we're funded by USA Hockey to do what we do, to hold live events and hold presentations and hold virtual events like this, where we can educate families about the road to NCAA hockey. So today, there was a variety of great questions that were sent in with the registrations. And at the conclusion of this presentation, I'll answer them all. But if you do have questions during the presentation, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, or a chat feature. Feel free to type in questions there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And there are no dumb questions. So feel free to ask me any questions you can, and I'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves today, I think it's important to understand the different levels of college hockey. Keep in mind, everything that we're going to focus on today after this slide will be about NCAA Division I hockey, the highest level of college hockey. There's 63 men's teams there and 43 women's teams. And there's 18 scholarships per hockey team. Now, we'll talk more about scholarships and what that looks like a little later in the presentation. But that's the only level that can provide you a scholarship based on your athletic ability. There's a level called NCAA Division III. There's over 100 programs that participate at that level. And the difference between Division I and Division III, outside of the obvious level of play, is that Division III cannot offer you a scholarship based on your athletic ability. They can offer you merit-based aid. They can offer you financial aid based on family income. They can offer you academic-based aid, an academic scholarship, but they cannot offer you a scholarship based on being an outstanding hockey player. There's a level called the ACHA. There's over 500 schools that participate at the ACHA level. They have 3 divisions: ACHA Division I, Division II, and Division III, and 2 divisions on the women's side, ACHA Division I and II. And they operate the same as NCAA Division III. There are no scholarships available for being an outstanding hockey player. The only level, again, that can do that is NCAA Division I. They can provide you a scholarship for being an outstanding hockey player. And that's what we're going to talk about here going forward. The players that participate at the Division I level have realistic opportunities and realistic dreams of one day playing in the NHL. So let's talk a little bit about the NHL. Last season, there were 349 players from the NCAA playing in the NHL. That was the most ever. And to put that in perspective, the year before that was the most ever, and the year before that was the most ever. And it's roughly 33% of the NHL. If you went back 20 years ago, that number was in the single digits. It was like 8 or 9% of the NHL were former NCAA Division I players. And if you go back far enough, late 60s, early 70s, there was only one former NCAA player in the NHL, and that player was Red Berenson. So it's gone from one player in the NHL to 1 in 3 players in the NHL chose college hockey as their development path. And that number will continue to grow because 35% of players right now making their NHL debuts are former NCAA hockey players. And I'm sure you're not aware of this, but about 10 years ago, there between 2010 and 2014, there was 29 American first round picks, and 12 of those players played NCAA hockey. In the last 5 years, there's been 29 first round picks that were American, and 30, and 29 of them played college hockey. So the level of college hockey is growing immensely as well, producing some of the best players in the world. And it's even more true if you're an American, based on that last stat as well. 80% of the Americans in the NHL chose college hockey as their development path. Now, I know from the registrations, there was a few Canadians in the audience, and 20% of Canadians in the NHL have now chose college hockey. And that number may seem low, but it's significant because that number was basically 0% at one time. So 20% of Canadians in the NHL chose college hockey. Players like Cale Makar, for example, who are having outstanding careers. So sometimes what comes up, and this just came up last week at a live event we did in Calgary. We were in Okotoks and Black Falls, Alberta, hosting an event. And sometimes what comes up in those audiences is somebody will say to me, well, Sean, the players that play college hockey that make it to the NHL, they only play 1 year of college hockey. There's the perception out there that it's a one and done. They come in for 1 year, and maybe you've heard that term before, and they go 1 year and they go to college hockey. But so we researched that because that didn't sound correct. And we found that 68% of NCAA players in the NHL play at least 3 years of college hockey. And the reason why that's important, and again, I touched on it in the beginning here, we're viewing this, listening to this portion of the presentation in comparison to some of your other options. The thing to keep in mind about college hockey is when you play it, it's not an under 20 junior league. You play at 20, 21, 22, and 23 years old. So 68% of college players in the NHL did just that. They played college hockey at 21 and 22 on their road to the NHL. 20% of all the players in the NHL are undrafted, and 56% of all the undrafted players are from college hockey. And the reason for that is what I just touched on, is when you play college hockey, you play at 21 and 22 years old, making you an NHL prospect for longer. And you're doing that while you're earning your degree as well. So one thing we don't touch on enough when it comes to college hockey, or what I should say, one thing we don't touch on enough as an organization, because we speak to a very specific audience about how college hockey can specifically prepare you for the highest level in the world. But there is an academic component, and 93% of college hockey players, or men's college hockey players, will earn their degree. To put that in perspective, that's always in the top 5 for graduation rates. And right now is the #1 graduation rate in all of the NCAA. So 93% of college hockey players will earn their degree. So what is it specifically about college hockey that prepares you for the NHL? Well, this is the end of the on ice piece of this presentation, but there's a variety of reasons here of why college hockey prepares you for the highest level in the world. I'm just going to touch on a few of them here briefly. One of them is the structure of the work week. So one of the questions that was asked was kind of the day in the life of an NCAA player. What's it look like? So you're going to practice every day in college hockey, Monday through Thursday, and you're going to play your games on Friday and Saturday night. And the thing to keep in mind, again, about college hockey, and I touched on it earlier, especially for some of you that may have choices as you get to 16 and 17 years old, is that, again, college hockey is not an under 20 junior league. You're going to be practicing and playing against grown men, preparing you to play against grown men at the highest level. So the players will be as old as 22, 23, 24 years old that you'll be practicing every day against and playing every day against. You'll have an opportunity to work with some of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world. They're educated and professional. I'm sure many of you have been to a Division I campus before and have seen some of these strength and conditioning facilities. They truly are world-class. The job description for a strength and conditioning coach at the Division I level really is to work with you to make you the most elite athlete you're capable of becoming, and to work with you on injury prevention. And again, you'll be doing this in world-class facilities. You have an opportunity to work with some of the best coaches in the world. We all know the stories of NCAA coaches going to the NHL. The new hiring trend at the Division I level is hiring coaches with NHL experience. That new head coach, newish head coach at Western Michigan University has NHL experience. New hire at Vermont has NHL experience. So we'll be working with some of the best coaches in the world because they've been at the highest level in the world, and they know what it takes to get to the highest level. And then finally, we don't talk about this portion enough either. Again, when you're comparing college hockey to your other options, there really is a small window of your life. And for some of you, maybe it'll be 18 to 22, and for others, it'll be 20 to 24, that you can combine an outstanding educational opportunity, an outstanding athletic opportunity, and then the social development that you go through at those ages. In my opinion, one of the best places to do that is on campus and playing college hockey. So there are some things, and we touched on it earlier, you do have choices on your road. If you're an outstanding hockey player, you'll have choices on your road to the highest level in the world. And one of those choices is participation in the CHL, which is called the Canadian Hockey League. There's 3 leagues that play in the CHL: the OHL, the QMJHL, and the WHL. The WHL is for players that live out west. The OHL is for players that live in the Midwest and Ontario. And the QMJHL is for players that live out on the East Coast and in Eastern Canada. Those players, if they participate in the CHL, are not eligible for NCAA athletics. So there's some things to keep in mind. Perhaps some of you have been drafted by one of these teams, or you're having conversations with some of these teams. But some things to keep in mind should you want to keep your amateur status and you're in touch with one of these teams. First thing to understand is you cannot sign a contract of any kind. If you sign a contract, you'll jeopardize your NCAA eligibility. If you play in just one game, scrimmage game, exhibition game, any type of game can jeopardize your NCAA eligibility. You cannot accept any gifts from a CHL organization. So sometimes when you're drafted, a team will send you a gift, like a jersey or a hat. You have 3 options there. You can give the item back, you can donate it to charity, or you can pay for that item, which is what 99% of players do. They will keep the item, but they will pay for the item. Now, you are allowed to practice with CHL teams. You can attend training camp of a CHL team, provided you do not sign a contract and provided that you pay your own way to be there. Now, there is a rule, and I think this is where people get confused. There's a rule called the 48-hour rule. And the 48-hour rule is pretty simple, actually. If you want one of these teams to pay for you to be there, meaning you want them to pay your expenses, they only can do it one time for a 48-hour period. You can stay longer than that afterwards, You just need to make sure that you pay your own way after that. And paying your own way is hotel, transportation, lodging, things like that. So there's a lot of different information there. And some people will ask me, well, why is it 48 hours? Like that sounds arbitrary to me. The reason why it's 48 hours is because once you become old enough to be recruitable age, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, by an NCAA team, once you become old enough to be recruited, you're allowed 5 official visits. And you can visit each school one time on an official visit, and you have 5 of those. And an official visit is when a school brings you in, they pay for your hotel, they pay for your transportation, they show you the facilities, you meet the coaches, you check out campus. An official visit is 48 hours long. So it's the same rule for a CHL team. They can do it one time for 48 hours. So hopefully that makes sense. And I do an entire presentation just on this topic alone. But if you are a player that encounters this and you have questions about it, you can absolutely reach out to me. I'll give you my contact information. And like I said, you'll receive an email from me tomorrow. I'm happy to walk you through that process. That being said, we speak with families individually constantly, and many players do choose the CHL route. But I'd like to remind families that, and they do so because they somehow think that it's a faster route to the NHL. And again, just a reminder that the number of NCAA players in the NHL is at the most ever, and it continues to grow each year. So let's talk a little bit about making the NHL and what that looks like. I guess in your heads, take a guess. How many players have played in the NHL all time? There's been over 100 years of NHL hockey. How many players have played in the NHL in the history of the NHL? How many played 1,000 games? How many played just one game in the NHL? And then what percent of all NHL players, their entire NHL career happens in one season? So, I mean, maybe they played one game or maybe they played all 82 games, but their entire NHL experience was just 6 months of their lives. So approximately 7,300 players have played in the NHL all time. Only 357 have played 1,000 games in over 100 years of NHL hockey. 389 more players played just one game in the NHL. And then 20%, it's just about 20.1% right now. 20% of all the NHL players that you watch on TV, their entire NHL experience will be just that hockey season. They maybe, like I said, it's one game or maybe it's all 82 games. But it's a small window of their lives. It's 5 or 6 months. So many of them have to do something beyond being a hockey player at some point in their lives. So I put these numbers out there, and it's not because I want to douse your dreams of playing in the NHL. It's great to have dreams, but it's important to understand how difficult it is to make it to the NHL, and really how difficult it is to have a career in the NHL and have that be what it is you're known for. But that being said, somebody has to make it, right? Roughly, for example, today, roughly 700 players woke up as NHL players. So what does that look like for you as a young hockey player? What can you expect at the ages of 15, 16, 17, 18 years old on your road to college hockey? What is the age at which things happen on this path? So again, I guess since we're virtually, take a guess out there in your heads. What do you think the average age a player earns an NCAA hockey commitment? And what I mean by that is a coach comes to you and says, I want you to play on my hockey team. Here's my scholarship offer. At what age do you think that happens? And then what's the typical age of a hockey playing freshman? And a freshman is a first-year hockey player, first-year student. So at what age do you think a college hockey player first puts on their college hockey jersey? So to me, this is one of the more eye-opening, I think, slides in this presentation. The normal age a player will earn a commitment is almost 19 years old. And that's going to take place while you're playing college eligible junior hockey. If you're in the US, that's a league like the USHL or the North American Hockey League, the NAHL. For those of you that are in Canada, your provincial junior leagues are outstanding opportunities for Division I hockey. That's the BCHL, the AJHL, the MJHL, the SJHL, the OJHL, your provincial junior A hockey leagues. Now, I know we all know players that earn commitments at a young age, at 16, and we know how averages work, right? So for every 16-year-old that earns a commitment, and what happens when young players earn commitments is it creates that wake of anxiety around that player. And what I mean by that is all the parents that play on that team and all the parents that are in that league, they wonder, well, where's my son's commitment? They feel like that's the normal age that it happens at 16, when in fact it's just much closer to 19. So for every 16-year-old that gets a commitment, there must be 3 or 4 20-year-olds earning their commitment to make that average 19 years old. The first time you put on that hockey jersey is over the age of 20. You're going to play college hockey at 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, bringing you right to that average NHL rookie age of 23. And I hear this all the time. The NHL is getting so young. The NHL is getting young for a handful of teenage hockey players, handful in the world of teenage hockey players that are good enough to play in the NHL. The NHL rookie age is actually ticking up a little bit. It's a little bit over 23 right now. There was more 24-year-old NHL rookies than there were 22-year-old NHL rookies. And just 2 weeks ago, an NHL rookie made his debut and he was 27 years old. So when you're comparing, and some of you will have an opportunity to make choices, whether it's college hockey or the CHL. And when you're comparing and you're in that decision-making mode, one of the biggest benefits of pursuing college hockey is the fact that it's just a longer development path, that you don't need to be a pro hockey player at 19. You can play college hockey at 20, 21, 22, while you're earning your degree in that environment we talked about with great coaches and outstanding facilities and world-class education, an NHL prospect while earning your degree. And which is why, over half the undrafted players in the NHL are college hockey players. You're just an NHL prospect for longer. So there are some recruiting rules that you need to be made aware of. They're newish. They're newish in the last 5 years. The first date that you need to be made aware of is the earliest that you're allowed to have a conversation with a college hockey coach is January 1st of grade 10. That's the earliest you're allowed to have a conversation. The earliest that you're allowed to get a commitment is August 1st before grade 11. And that's a verbal commitment. The earliest that can happen is August 1st before grade 11. Now, the thing to keep in mind about these dates is that is not when things happen. That is the earliest they're allowed to happen by rule. So I just showed you in the previous slide, it's just much more likely to happen closer to 19 years old while you're playing junior hockey. There will be players that get commitments while playing minor hockey and youth hockey, but the vast majority of players will not have a conversation with a Division I coach until they're over the age of 18 playing junior hockey. So where do players play junior hockey? Where do they play, their youth hockey? What does the road to Division I look like? I don't think this is all that eye-opening. And again, this is based on these are American. This is where Americans play. The AJHL, the BCHL are great leagues for Canadian players. But in the US, the USHL leads the way. And I'm not sure, I think most people understand that the USHL is the top junior league in the US for ages 16 to 20 years old, followed by the North American League and then the NCDC. This is a measure of where players played directly before they went to Division I. Now, I think what is a little bit eye-opening for people that are paying really close attention to this is where they play before they enter junior hockey. There is a sense in many places in the US that 18U hockey is somehow a dead end. Like you cannot get to Division I if you play 18U. If you see here, this is a measure of current Division I players, and 345 of them played 18U on their road to Division I. There will always be players who are good enough at 16 or 17 to leave the youth hockey system and go play in the USHL or the North American League. But the vast majority of players are not good enough at 16 or 17 years old to play against 20-year-olds. They need that extra year, their senior year of high school, to either play high school hockey or prep school hockey or 18U hockey on their road to Division I. So hopefully that makes sense. And I know for some of the newer families out there that this might be confusing, but feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to answer questions on this topic. So there's an academic component when it comes to NCAA Division I athletics. You need to take your 16 core courses. Now, if you're enrolled in a brick and mortar high school, I can almost assure you that you're taking the necessary courses. If you're doing something online, which is becoming more common, I would just make sure that you check in with the academic coordinator to make sure you're taking the necessary courses to be eligible for NCAA Division I athletics. Now, there has been a lot of talk about the SAT and the ACT. They, at this moment, are no longer required for initial eligibility to participate in Division I athletics. However, you should still take one of those tests. You do not have to take both for two reasons. One, there will always be schools that require it for admission. So the NCAA may say that you are eligible to play. The school that you apply to may require it for admission. And two, should you test well, combined with a strong GPA, there's academic scholarship money available, should you test well. But there is something you must do, and that's register with the NCAA Eligibility Center. Website's right there, eligibilitycenter.org. Pretty simple system. And all Americans interested in Division I or Division II athletics must do so. And all Canadians, whether you play Division I or Division III, must register with the Eligibility Center. Again, eligibilitycenter.org, they do two things. They certify your academics. They're the ones that will make sure that you meet the academic requirements for participation. And two, they're the ones that will certify your amateurism status. So they're the ones that will look into, did they play in the CHL? Did they play in the OHL? Did you play European professional hockey? They're the ones that certify amateurism status. So let's talk a little bit about scholarships and what scholarships look like at the Division I level. There's 60 schools that participate, over 60 schools that participate in Division I, and that number continues to grow. There's 63 right now. Each hockey team has 18 scholarships, and they're called equivalency scholarships. Now that is different for the Ivy League schools. The Ivy League schools are that play hockey are Cornell, Harvard, Brown, Princeton, Yale, and Dartmouth. I think I said all six there. Those schools do not provide athletic scholarships. They do provide financial aid based on family income, and they have the ability to put together packages to make those educations affordable for families. The other schools have 18 athletic scholarships. And like I said, they're called equivalency scholarships. And that means a coach can break up those scholarships in any way he sees fit. So a player can get a 50% scholarship or a 75% scholarship or a 10% scholarship, as long as they all add up to 18. Now, the unique advantage to that is you can combine an athletic scholarship with an academic scholarship. So you can get a fifth, if you've done well academically, you've done what you need to do off the ice, you become that much more marketable. One, you can be accepted to more schools can recruit you. But they can also offer you more money. So they can offer you a 50% athletic scholarship and a 50% academic scholarship. Now you're at 100% full ride education paid for because you've done both things well. Now, sometimes families will tell me, well, my son's not strong academically. We're going to pursue something that's not, NCAA hockey. We're going to look at some of our other options. And I still tell those families, you should still take a hard look at the NCAA development path for all the reasons I mentioned before, but also because I'm sure most people on this call are well aware that being a Division I athlete is a big deal. And what I mean by that is it's in the best interest of the coach, the best interest of the athletic director, the best interest of the president of the university, that student athletes do well academically. So you'll be provided with every extra opportunity that normal students on campus don't get. So you'll get extra tutoring, extra study tables, really whatever you need to not only achieve athletic success, but academic success as well. And that's a big reason why the graduation rate is so high at 93%. It's not because every hockey player is going to go on to medical school. It's because you're offered more of an advantage and more of an opportunity. So even if your grades are just okay, don't let that be a deterrent to not pursuing, playing college hockey. So I hear this quite a bit. It's kind of one of the questions that is always asked. Well, what do I need to do? I want to get to the next level. I was real fortunate. Maybe 10 years ago now. I was on staff at Western Michigan University. And at that time, the head coach was Jeff Blashill. And Jeff Blashill went on to be the head coach of the Red Wings. And now he's an assistant in Tampa Bay. But the players in that team, they were just like you guys. They were just bigger and older. But they would come to us and say, Coach, what do I need to do to get to the NHL? What do I need to do to get to the AHL? And I always thought Blash had great advice. He's like, well, one thing is you can't focus on your next job until you do a great job where you're at. There is no magic pill. There's no magic team you have to be on. There's certainly no summer showcase that you have to go to. to be noticed to play Division I. It really comes down to, regardless of whatever level you're playing at now, you're going to have to be one of the better players on the ice, and you're going to have to do do the right things off the ice. And if you do that, you'll get an opportunity at the next level. And whatever that next level is, the same thing holds true there. You're going to have to be one of the best players on the ice. You're going to have to do the right things off the ice, and that's going to hold true all the way to Division I and all the way to the NHL. You can never not be one of the best players on the ice. And then finally here, before we wrap up, and I take the questions, quite a few questions, it looks like they came in. We interview plenty of NCAA players in the NHL, and we do it quite a bit as an organization. And the theme that always comes back from these interviews is, man, I had, so much fun playing college hockey. It really becomes part of their identity, where they went to school. And many of you know this, where you're an alum from becomes part of who you are, part of your identity. And the reason for that is because they had so much fun playing college hockey. I can't tell you that it's 90% fun or 70% fun or anything like that, but it's certainly a lot of fun to walk into class on Monday morning and have people whispering, that's so-and-so from the hockey team. He scored 2 goals last night. And I saw them on CBS Sports, or I saw them on ESPN. And many of these schools have 50 or 60 years worth of living alumni that are deeply passionate about college athletics. And for our Canadian friends on the call today, I mean, it's arguable that collegiate sports are bigger than professional sports in many places in the U.S. So certainly is a lot of fun to play college hockey. So finally here, before we wrap up and answer the questions, roughly 33% of the NHL is former college hockey players. That is the most ever. It continues to grow year over year because of these stats that we shared earlier. And then know that 93% of our players are currently earning their degree. And this might be the most important thing, is just knowing when things happen. And that was one of the questions that came in. When can you expect to talk to college coaches? When can I hear from college coaches? This is typically when it takes place. So just know that this is based on a study that we did of all NCAA Division I college hockey players. And we do it each year. And the number has been pretty consistent, 18.9 or 19 over the last 3 years. And finally here, everything that we do at College Hockey Inc. we're a free resource. And I'll share some of our information on our website at collegehockeyinc.com. There's our Twitter. That's my email address. Looks like plenty of questions came in, so happy to answer some questions here. Is there such a thing as D2 NCAA hockey? So really good question. Not really. There's a handful of teams. They're called the Northeast 10 that are NCAA Division II schools. They operate as NCAA Division III teams, and they play an NCAA Division III schedule. So the conference is called NE10. Schools like Southern New Hampshire, Franklin Pierce. However, they do not qualify for NCAA Division III national championships. They're Division II schools that essentially play D3 and do not offer hockey scholarships. So good question. So if a family doesn't have a bunch of money, essentially to play hockey year round, what are the best way to keep advancing skills and having opportunities to get noticed by colleges? Well, great question. Hockey is becoming, for the exception of basically Minnesota, hockey is becoming almost financially unattainable, which is a problem that we won't need to get into all that. But the best way, honestly, is college coaches. First of all, they're going to read. College coaches are watching junior hockey games, and they're watching them during their seasons. Do not get caught up in the summer showcase schedules and things like that. The best advice is to play where you're currently playing and be one of the better players on the ice, and then hopefully get to whatever that next level is. For the vast majority of players, not even the vast majority, 100% for the most part, have to play junior hockey. So your goal as a minor hockey player or a youth hockey player should be to continue to get better and better. So when you're 18 or 17, that you can play junior hockey. And at that point is when you'll have opportunities, hopefully, to talk to college coaches. On our website at collegehockeyinc.com, you can check that out. There's on one of the sections, you can contact coaches. We have the email address for every NCAA Division I assistant coach. And you can email those coaches, and I would be specific. I say, here's where I'm playing. Here's a link. If you have an elite prospects page, that's a free thing. It's something that happens for players that are at a recruitable age playing at a kind of a recruitable league. You can send them that link and ask them the question. I'm interested in your school. I'm interested in your hockey program. What do I need to do to get there? Just remember those dates that I gave you. If it's before January 1st at grade 10, then they're not allowed to contact you. So that's a good question. So good question with NIL and colleges now paying players. It appears a contradiction for NCAA eligibility to be eliminated for playing CHL. So that's a really good question. So NIL colleges aren't directly paying players. It does come from outside sources, but that's besides the point. And I completely understand what you're saying about the CHL. So a common misnomer with the CHL is that they're ineligible because they're paid. That's really not true. Honestly, what happened in the early 80s, it was a decision was made by the conferences, not the NCAA. The hockey playing conferences decided that CHL players were no longer eligible, and they've been ineligible ever since. And there's really not a good reason. There's not like a reason. You can't say that a player's experience in Muskegon of the USHL is different than their experience in Windsor of the OHL. So that's a really good question. As of right now, CHL players are ineligible. But there's not a really good reason for it. So good point. Good question about when to register with the eligibility center. And I should have mentioned that during that slide. So it's recommended that you do it during 11th grade to register with the eligibility center at eligibilitycenter.org. You can do it as early as grade 9, but you can also do it after that. You can do it while you're playing junior hockey. So eligibilitycenter.org, all players must do it. Recommended that you do it in grade 11. Do you have statistics on what percentage of players who play in the USHL have played at AAA versus AA USA Hockey Youth level? I do not have statistics. But if you go look at the USHL draft, you can see that the vast majority of those players are playing AAA, or they're playing high school hockey, or prep school hockey. I'm sure there's players that play AA on their road there. I do not have those statistics. If you're a AA player at 16 or 17 years old, again, the same holds true. You need to be one of the best players at AA, and AAA can be very expensive depending on where you live. But your goal should be at that point at 16 or 17 as a AA player to get to junior hockey. And I would suggest reaching out to junior hockey coaches as well. Now, many of those leagues and teams charge for tryouts. But to get in front of them, I would recommend reaching out to them. And again, the Division I producing leagues are the USHL, the North American League, and the NCDC. Is there an advantage for my son to take a gap year between graduating high school and attending college to focus on playing juniors and hope to get attention from a college? It's not, I don't want to say it's an advantage or disadvantage, but unfortunately or fortunately, but hockey inherently, every player does that. And then there are some players that are good enough to play college hockey at 18 as true freshmen at the Division I level. Again, I'm talking about Division I hockey, but there's still very few. The average hockey playing freshman is over the age of 20. So not only will it be 1 year of junior hockey, it's much likely to be 2 or 3 years of junior hockey before they get to college. Now, many players do take college courses while they're playing junior hockey, but there are some rules there. You cannot enroll full-time in a university. Once you enroll full-time at a university, your athletic eligibility clock begins. So take just a few classes each semester to stay sharp academically. Good question. Is it true that there a higher age interest for goalies into college hockey? True, there is. College hockey commitment age for goalies is 19.1. So there's a few months difference. There is a longer development path for goaltenders. And we actually did a study on 187 NCAA Division I goalies and where they played from the ages of 16 to 20. And I'll share that study in the email that I send out tomorrow. Because goalies are a little bit different in terms of commitment age. And mostly that has to do with just a few spots that are available. Same in junior hockey. The goalies are a little bit older there as well. Can you touch more on the recruiting process? Absolutely. So NCAA Division I coaches, assistant coaches are the ones out there doing the recruiting. Junior teams have a network of scouts, right? And there's no real rules around that. You probably see guys wearing junior jackets all the time, and they'll call the junior coach, "Hey, I saw this kid." In Division I, the assistant coaches are the ones on the road doing the recruiting. I do advise that you should reach out to them, let them know who you are, let them know your schedule. But they do receive a lot of emails. But they're the ones out there doing it, and they're going to be recruiting almost exclusively at the junior hockey level. Now, there are kids that will get commitments in minor hockey, starting at about the 15 only age, 16U age. That they're at the AAA level, and in Minnesota high school hockey, there'll be a lot of college coaches watching that. But the majority of commitments aren't made until you're almost 19 years old. And the assistant coaches are out there, the ones out there watching those games. But if you go to our website, again, collegehockeyinc.com, there's a section called Contact Coaches, and you can see all the different teams and all their assistant coaches and their contact information. At what age would someone indicate they are interested in D1 through the Eligibility Center? So again, with the Eligibility Center, recommended that you start filling out that profile, and the profile is free to start, and you do that in grade 11. Once it gets to the point that a coach wants to recruit you, then there's a fee through the Eligibility Center for them to certify you, because there's countless amounts of people that will fill out the Eligibility Center profile, but they won't certify anybody until a school calls the Eligibility Center and says, "I want to recruit this player." If that makes sense. At that point, there's a fee, a processing fee. And I believe it's $100 for Canadians and $90 for Americans, I believe. If you play in the BCHL, AJHL, or OJHL, can you take any university or college courses? Like I said, you can enroll post high school while you're playing junior hockey. Just make sure that you do not enroll full-time. Full-time is dictated by the university in which you enroll. So you can take 1 or 2 college courses while you're playing junior hockey. I asked earlier about academics being the priority over athletics. What advice do you have for a high school senior that wants to go directly to a university to continue his studies, even if a hockey opportunity is a few years away? Are junior teams open to you going to college while you play? Absolutely. In fact, per USA Hockey, so the USHL and the North American League, each team has to have an academic coordinator to help you with that process. So not only should they be open to it, they should encourage it. You should be doing something besides just playing junior hockey. Same question about the eligibility stuff in terms of taking courses. If your athlete is a very good student and they take a gap year, will that minimize their potential for academic scholarship? No, especially if you enroll in college courses to show that you've kept up. So in general, this is not each university is a little different, but in general, the academic scholarships, there's a pool of money at the beginning of each year at the financial aid office that the school is willing to, pay for academic scholarships. The earlier you apply in that process, there's more of that pool of money available. As later you get in the process, the less of that money is available. So when it comes to applying for schools, earlier in that cycle that you can apply, the more likely you are to get academic money, if that makes sense. What numbers of credits is considered full-time? That's dictated by the university in which you enroll. In some places, it's 4 classes. In other places, it's 14 credits. But the school in which you enroll will dictate whether or not that's full-time. Somebody says goalies are different in many ways. That could also be true. So that was great. That was a lot of really good questions there. So great job on the questions today. So tomorrow morning, everybody who registered for this will receive a link to the recording. You'll receive different links to those articles that I referenced in the goalie path study. I'll show you a study that we did on all Division I players and where they played and where we got those numbers. So I'm happy to help at any time. And if you have questions there, always feel free to reach out to me. One last question here before we go. Do you see the rules changing on CHL player eligibility in the NCAA? Right now, the only road is playing junior A in Canada. Correct. I mean, in Canada, especially, the players have more of a choice. You're more exposed, especially culturally, to major junior hockey in the CHL. Do I see it changing? I don't know. I think there's been more discussions about it than I've ever heard before. And I would say perhaps we're closer than we've ever been. The process for that, though, again, is not the NCAA. The NCAA doesn't have somebody sitting there thinking about the eligibility rules on the CHL. If college hockey got together, and what I mean by that are the 63 playing schools and the conferences came together and decided that we're going to make CHL players eligible, then the NCAA would say, okay, because they're the enforcement arm, right? The leagues make the rules and the NCAA enforces it. So that process would have to take place first. The teams would have to come together and the conferences decide to make that decision, and then they'd have to notify the NCAA that that's the road they want to go. So great questioning. This is fantastic. These are deeper questions than I normally get. So I enjoy answering these. So somebody just said thank you. So yeah, I appreciate everybody's time this evening. Look for an email from me tomorrow. And again, if you have more questions, this is what we do. And there's never a charge for what we do. We're funded through the NHL and funded through USA Hockey. So you can email me at any point. I'm happy to help. Oh, and one last thing I want to say, I want to thank Danny Heath again for organizing this. I know he got on after I thanked him early. So I want to thank Danny for the opportunity to speak to everybody. This was great. And we're here to help out anytime. A lot of good things coming in here. A lot of thank yous. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.